Our gospel text from today is taken from the Gospel of John chapter 1, verses 35 to 41. And it concerns the call of the first disciples. As a matter of fact, unlike in the Gospels of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, where Jesus calls the disciples, in the Gospel of John, it is a more realistic narration because at the time of Jesus, it was very rare for the rabbi to call disciples. It was disciples who went behind the rabbi. And so John narrates a historical event in these verses. Jesus is passing by. And even as Jesus passes by, John the Baptist, who has two disciples, sees him from the corner of his eye. And John is caught in a dilemma. And the dilemma is, should he point Jesus out to the two disciples, or should he remain quiet? If he remains quiet, his disciples will remain with him and they will never know about Jesus. If he points Jesus out to them, they will leave him and go behind Jesus. And so John is wondering what he must do. Honestly, John doesn't wonder what he must do. He knows what he must do for two reasons. He knows what he must do because he knows who he is, and he knows who Jesus is. He is the baptizer. He is the witness. He is the one who goes before. He is the one who points to the superior one, to the greater one. So John the Baptist knows his role. He knows where his authority ends, and he knows how much he can give his disciples. He also knows who Jesus is. And because he knows who Jesus is, he knows that Jesus can give them infinitely more than he can. And because he is concerned about his disciples more than he is concerned about himself, more than his ego, more than his self, he points Jesus out to them. And even as he points Jesus out to them, he uses only one of the four titles that he had used earlier. Earlier, he had identified Jesus as the Lamb of God, the one who existed before him, or the pre-existent one, the vehicle or the carrier of the Spirit, and the Son of God. He used four titles because he realized that Jesus could not be contained by one, not that Jesus could be contained by four. But when his disciples are with him, and when he sees Jesus passing by, in order to identify Jesus, he uses only one, and that is the first of the four that he had used the previous day, namely the Lamb of God. And the reason why he uses the title the Lamb of God is so that the disciples know exactly whom they are following. The Lamb whom John the Baptist talks about is the victorious Lamb, yes, but the victorious Lamb, after that Lamb will be led to the slaughter. And that is made clear in the passion narrative of the Gospel of John, because on the day before the Passover, when the Paschal lambs were being slaughtered in the temple, in John chapter 19, verse 14, the evangelist tells us it was at that time that Pilate, sitting on the judgment seat, pronounced that Jesus was to die, that Jesus was to be crucified, that Jesus was to be killed. In other words, John the Baptizer already, when pointing Jesus out to the disciples, will tell them that they are following someone who is bound to get into trouble, and they may get into trouble because of him. In other words, they must know who they are following. And because the evangelist wants to indicate that they knew whom they were following, the evangelist adds, and his disciples heard him say this. By adding this phrase, his disciples heard him say this, the evangelist is telling us that the disciples who went behind Jesus understood whom they were going behind, understood at least on the surface level what following Jesus would entail. And they leave the Baptist without a word of thanks, without a word of gratitude, without a word of appreciation, and they go behind Jesus. The evangelist John does not tell us the names of the disciples, and even later, he does not tell us both the names, he tells us only one. And a possible reason why he doesn't give us the other name is because he wants us as readers of his gospel, as meditators on his gospel, to place ourselves in the position of this other disciple. And so we are walking as that other disciple behind Jesus. And even as we walk, it is very likely that Jesus hears our footsteps behind him, and he turns. And he turns and asks us an all-important question, which is two Greek words, ti zetete. It is in the imperative tense, and it is translated in English as, what do you seek? That is the literal translation. Zetein is to seek. So what do you seek? This might be translated also as, what are you looking for? It might be translated as, why are you following me? Or, why do you seek me? Or, what do you want from life? Or, what is your plan in life? What is your agenda for life? Any of these translations are okay to translate the Greek, ti zetete. What do you seek? What are you looking for? What is your plan in life? What is your agenda in life? Why do you continue to live as you do? It is a courteous question, a direct question, and yet a very penetrating question. It makes us go into the depth of our being in order to be able to answer it. The disciples do not answer, but they ask a counter question. And the counter question is, Rabbi, where do you remain? Where do you stay? Where do you dwell? Where do you abide? Where do you reside? This Greek word menein may be translated in any of these ways: remain, abide, reside, dwell, stay. So they are not asking for the address of Jesus. When they say, Rabbi, literally, where do you stay? They are asking where the heart of Jesus is. And because Jesus knows that this is their question, he does not respond with an external address. He responds with an invitation. And the invitation is to come and see. Just like hearing is to understand. Seeing is to see with the external eyes, the eyes of the head, but also to experience with the heart. So when Jesus issues an invitation to the disciples to come and see, what he is really saying is, come and make an experience of me. Come and stay where I stay. Come and remain where I remain. Come and abide where I abide. Come and reside where I reside. Come and dwell where I dwell. Come and let your being and my being be one. And the text goes on to say that the disciples accepted the invitation and gives us a time reference when they did so. It says it was the 10th hour. Some translations in English will say it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. That is true when you translate what 10th hour means into language which we understand the way we record time. It was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. However, John is not telling us that it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon. He was telling us that it was the 10th hour. And what does John mean by the 10th hour? The 10th period, according to some apocalyptic calculations, was the decisive hour, the hour of choice, the hour when a person had to say yes or no, the hour when a person could not sit on the fence, when a person could not be hot or cold, had to either be hot or cold. So when John the Evangelist tells us it was the 10th hour, hora enhos dekatein, he is telling us it was the hour when the disciples decided for Jesus. It was the hour when the disciples made the choice of their lives. It was the hour when the disciples transformed their whole person by identifying with as disciples of the Lord. I said earlier that we can be one of those two disciples because it is only toward the end of this narrative, of this story, that the evangelist gives us the name. He tells us, and one of those who followed him was Andrew, the brother of Simon Peter. And he also gives us Andrew's reaction, how Andrew responded after being with Jesus. He rushed to his brother Simon Peter and said to him, we have found the Messiah. That was Andrew's response. That was what Andrew did after encountering Jesus. Now you are that other disciple. You have gone behind Jesus. He has turned and asked you that question. You have responded to his question either with an answer or with a question of your own. He has responded to you and invited you to remain, and you have remained with him. Now, how will you respond?